Welcome to Better Collective. In this video, we'll be talking about safer gambling, how to spot warning signs of a gambling addiction in yourself and others, and how to get necessary support and treatment. Safer or responsible gambling is a phrase commonly used in our industry to limit the risks associated with problem gambling. Licensed gambling operators are required to offer various tools to players so they have full control over their gambling behavior. But firstly, let's take a look at some of the most common tools you can use to stay safe and in control of your gambling habits. Before you decide which of the game control options to choose, you need to get acquainted with your own gambling patterns. Regularly taking some time to reflect on your gambling behavior can be an effective way of making sure that gambling remains a fun activity, which then doesn't lead to gambling-related harm. Online gambling websites usually provide access to your account activity, which means you are able to see when you have gambled, how much money you have spent during a gambling session, how often you have logged in, and how much time you're spending on the site. Being aware of your gambling behavior allows you to control your play based on your activity, so don't hesitate to check the stats. There are also self-assessment tools to help you understand the effects of your gambling behavior. You could use a self-test tool like Gamerlize to assess how risky your gambling style is. Once you're aware of your gambling patterns, you can then control the way you gamble online by setting spend and/or time limits. Visit the safer or responsible gambling page of a gambling operator to find all the information on the game control tools they offer. Some of the most common tools you may find across the operators could be money control. So, for example, a budget calculator will allow you to determine exactly how much you can spend on gambling without experiencing any risk, considering your regular expenses and income. Deposit limits enable you to control how much money you can deposit over a certain period of time. Loss limits lets you control the net amount of money you can lose on a particular product over a certain period of time. Once you've hit your limit, you won't be able to play on that product again until your limit resets. And finally, wager limits. These allow you to limit the total amount spent per bet or wager on a daily, weekly, and/or monthly basis. And finally, time control. Reality check timers enable you to set reminders and monitor the time you spend on a gambling website. When a reminder pops up, you should pause and think, is it time to log out? Timeout breaks block you from accessing your account for a shorter period of time that you actually choose. It can last for a couple of weeks, for example. You can also self-exclude yourself from gambling for a longer period of time, both at a single operator's website or by using a national self-exclusion scheme. These schemes enable you to block all of your accounts with licensed gambling operators and prevent you from creating new accounts for a longer period of time, including up to several years. Now, more information on the national self-exclusion mechanisms can be found in the description of this video. There are other preventative tools as well, such as the product block feature offered by some gambling operators that enables you to block certain products, for example poker or casino, for a period of time that you choose. And finally, you can also install software that blocks all gambling sites and apps on all of your devices. Some of these, for example, are gamban.com, gamblock.com, betfilter.com, and betblocker.org. And you can also block or freeze gambling transactions at your bank. Some banks allow customers to block gambling transactions or even freeze cards so you're not able to spend money at gambling operators. Check with your bank to see if this can be an option for you. Now, despite the available tools, some players can experience some form of problematic gambling behavior. So now let's explore what problem gambling actually is, how to spot it, and where to find help. Now, gambling as an activity affects the reward system of our brains and can create a very strong feeling of a high. This can be addictive for some people and bring about numerous negative consequences. Problem gambling is an umbrella term that refers to a spectrum of inappropriate gambling behavior, with compulsive gambling being the most serious one. It's a behavioral addiction that is characterized by a pattern of persistent or recurring gambling, manifested by impaired control over gambling, increasing priority given to gambling over other life interests, and finally, continuation or escalation of gambling despite the occurrence of negative consequences in life. Addicted gamblers tend to go through 4 phases. Firstly, the winning phase. So the gambler experiences a big win and will likely attribute that to their skill. Gambling continues in order to repeat that success. And phase 2 is losing. Losses are chased with increased gambling. The gambler, despite losing large sums, becomes more worried about gambling than what else is going on in their lives, be it family, friends, or work. The third phase is desperation. The gambler continues to lose money and seeks out any means necessary to get the next bet on. Neglect of reality leading to job loss, divorce, and financial or even criminal troubles. And the final phase, the darkest phase, hopelessness. It's not easy to talk about, but it does need to be said. This is where a gambler has lost everything, even hope for winning, but keeps on playing. They may turn to drugs to deal with the losses or even contemplate suicide. However, gambling addiction is treatable. Recognizing the problem is the first step toward effective treatment, but sufferers are often unaware or in denial of having a problem. So what are the warning signs? Well, there are signals that may warn you about your gambling not being about entertainment anymore. This is how you can recognize that you may have developed a problematic gambling behavior. You increase the number of days or daily time that you spend on gambling. You gamble with increased amounts to achieve the desired excitement. After losing money gambling, you often return another day to get even. This is also called chasing losses. Perhaps you gamble away money needed for another purpose, for example, to pay your household bills. Also, you can rely on others to provide money to relieve desperate financial situations caused by gambling. Perhaps you've risked or lost a relationship, job, education, or career opportunity because of gambling. You could also struggle with sleep because of your gambling habits. Maybe you often gamble when feeling distressed, for example, helpless, guilty, or anxious. Also, you lie about how much you gamble, or finally, you feel restless or irritable when attempting to cut down or stop gambling. We highly recommend you to reach out for help if you can relate to any of the above statements. Read carefully the description of this video to see what support and therapy options may be available to you. Problem gambling is sometimes referred to as a hidden addiction because it can be present without any physical signs. Many people who suffer from gambling harms will go to great lengths to hide their behavior due to feelings of shame and guilt. This is why it's particularly important to pay attention to warning signs that signal that your close one might be suffering and is in need of help. Here are some telltale behavioral signs. First of all, the person talks about gambling all the time. They're also less willing to spend money on things other than gambling. Perhaps they cheat or steal to get the money to gamble or pay debts. They could also run into legal problems related to gambling. They also neglect personal responsibilities. Perhaps they stop doing things that he or she may have previously enjoyed. They miss events, for example. They could also start ignoring self-care, work, school, or family tasks. And perhaps they also have conflicts over money with other people. There are also emotional signs, so they can be withdrawn from family, colleagues, or friends. They also seem distant, anxious, or have issues paying attention. You could also run into mood swings or sudden outbursts of anger, or the person may complain about boredom or restlessness, and perhaps they even seem depressed or suicidal. Then there are also financial signs to be aware of, so they frequently borrow money or ask for salary advances, for instance. They could also take a second job without a change in their usual finances, or they cash in on savings accounts, pensions, or insurance plans. Perhaps they could also alternate between being broke and then flashing the cash. Family members could also complain that valuables and appliances are disappearing or money is missing from bank accounts or even a wallet. So if you spot these signs, in order to provide help, you should read more about problematic gambling behavior and listen to stories from people who have dealt with this problem. This will help you understand what your close one is going through. And you should also reach out to a helpline or other support resources and talk to a trained person about your observations, concerns, and how you should approach the person experiencing the problem. Like I said before, down in the description of this video, you'll find support options available to you in your country of residence. In the end, we want to repeat that the most important thing you can do as a gambler is to prevent problem gambling from developing in the first place. Now, here are some short tips on how to stay safe when gambling. Tip number 1, don't think of gambling as a way to make money. Tip number 2, only gamble with money you can afford to lose. Tip 3, never chase your losses. Tip number 4, set a money limit in advance before you play. Tip 5, set a time limit in advance, and when time's up, quit. Tip 6, take frequent breaks. Tip number 7, don't gamble when you're depressed or upset. Tip number 8, make sure gambling isn't your only pastime. And tip number 9, don't gamble when you drink or use drugs. Thanks for watching this guide to safer gambling. Remember, more tools and information can be found through the links in the description below this video. Good luck with safer gambling.